This is a story about a man with a story about stories, if you will. Once upon a time, there was a man with a story. This wasn't any old story, not one you could find on a bookshelf or heard around a campfire. This was his story and no one else's. This story was carefully crafted. It began when he was born, and this story told of his loves and his fears, his dreams realized, and his dreams yet to come. This story was complete. It told his whole life, including those bits that still existed in his imagination. In fact, this story was so complete, and he was so happy with this story that he carried it around to make sure it was safe. It was somewhat bulky and unwieldy, but he didn't mind. It was his story. The thing about his story, it was very fragile, made up of many pieces, held together by only his imagination. He was worried it might break apart at any minute. And so he grew more and more protective of his story. He held it even closer. And as he went about his life, he checked on the story to make sure it was following it, make sure he was following it correctly. He avoided adventure and unknowns because, well, they might break his story. And then one day, the inevitable happened. Without warning, his story broke. It was unforeseen, and he hadn't done anything wrong, but there it was, laying in 1,000 shattered pieces on the ground, with the sunlight glinting off the bits of the story he had so carefully protected all those years. He was heartbroken. And since his story hadn't said to put the pieces back together, he was at a loss. What now? He sat down next to the pile of pieces and cried. A while later, maybe it was minutes, maybe it was hours, a group of people came out of the nearby building and saw him sitting on the sidewalk, surrounded by a pile of broken pieces, clearly in need of help. "What happened?" a woman asked. "My story's gone. I worked so hard to build it, to protect it, to keep it from harm, and now it's gone. Gone," he wailed. "Is this the story here?" a man asked. "Yes, look at it. There's nothing left of it." "It looks like it's here, not gone," said a child. "We just have to put it back together." "Put it back together? There's no way. You don't even know what it looked like. How will you put it back together if you don't even know me?" The child was tenacious. "Don't worry. With all of us here to help, we'll put it back together in a way that you would never even expect. You never know. It might be more beautiful than before." And so they swept up the pieces of the man's story carefully and went together into the building, which they had merged. They poured him some coffee, sang a song he had never heard before, something about coming and coming again, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times. The song was soothing. The coffee was warm. He began to feel hope again that his story could be put back together. And it took a long time, maybe a couple days, maybe years even, but they got it all back together, and they added new parts. And some old parts didn't fit anymore, but that was okay. The child had been right. It was more beautiful than before. And this time, the story held together was not only held together by his imagination, but by the imagination and support of the entire community. And it wasn't nearly so fragile, and it even allowed for adventure. I hope you will allow your stories to be expanded and add some adventure to them. And if you need some help, you can just look around to each other and get some support as well. And that is our story.